G'day, Greg from Raine&Horne, and today I'm here with Aaron Strickland from Kenny Spring Solicitors. I caught up with Aaron today because I really wanted to catch up and talk about contracts, conveyancing, and what it all means for buyers and sellers. So, welcome Aaron, it's great to be able to catch up with you.
Thanks for having me, mate.
No, it's appreciated. I'm very appreciative of your time, mate.
Not a problem at all.
No dramas. So, first of all, I must say that this information is general in nature, and we always recommend that if you're seeking to buy or sell a home, that you seek your own professional advice. So, but this will certainly give you an overview of what conveyancing is all about. So Aaron, I guess we'll get straight into it.
Sure.
In a nutshell, mate, what is conveyancing and what's it all mean?
Okay, so Greg, conveyancing is just a fancy word, mate, for the legal process of transferring ownership of one property from a person to another person. Simple as that. Doesn't matter if it's a standard home, a unit, an apartment, could be a hobby farm, a commercial farm. If it's being bought or sold, we call that conveyancing. Greg, in New South Wales, as you know, the conveyancing process takes about 6 weeks.
Yep. The
terms and conditions of a conveyance are set out in a contract for the sale of land that's prepared by the seller of the property. Now, a lot of purchasers, as you know, are absolutely shocked when we tell them that the process can take 6 weeks, and rightfully so. They ask us, why can't I just sign the contract, pay the deposit, and get the keys today?
Yep.
And that's a fair question to ask, I think, but there's a little bit more to it than that.
Yep.
The conveyancing process involves a lot of different steps. There's a lot to think about and a lot to do, from exchange all the way through to settlement. Essentially, mate, you can rest assured that we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make sure that the matter settles on time and that the purchaser and vendor's interests are looked after.
All right. So why do people come to people like yourself, Aaron, and get conveyancing? Why is it important that they do that?
Well, without following the proper conveyancing process, there's a risk that your agreement with someone to buy their property or sell your property could be unclear, could be completely uncertain. There's also a risk if you're the buyer that you might not be buying what you think you're buying. There's also a risk without following the tried and tested conveyancing process that you might miss some things. I'll give you a quick example. After contracts are exchanged, we at Kenny Spring always do a search of the council rates on a property if we're acting for a buyer. We essentially check if there's any outstanding rates on a property, and if there are, we'll make sure that that overdue account is paid out by the seller when they sell the property and they've got all those sale proceeds to spend. If you skipped the conveyancing process and just did an agreement on the back of a beer coaster, and trust me, I've seen it done, you risk that and you could move into the property and find out there's 10 grand in rates arrears sitting there, and you would cop that. It would not follow the seller to their new home. You would be stuck with that as the new owner.
Now, you've used a couple of words in there that some people may or may not be familiar with. So you exchange, settlement, the processes. What does exchange mean, and what does settlement mean, and what happens between the 2 points?
Okay, so essentially exchange is just a fancy way of saying that the purchaser has signed their contract for the sale of land, which, as I said before, is prepared by the seller. The seller's signed their copy, and you swap them over. So you literally exchange those contracts when you're ready. If you are the buyer of a property, you should be certain that you want to proceed with the purchase before you allow contracts to be exchanged.
Yes.
You need to have paid your deposit because it's at that exchange point that the deal's locked in. There are a few exceptions, so sometimes the seller will let you exchange contracts but give you 5 business days cooling off time to have a few sleepless nights, rethink it, and maybe pull out. If you do, buyer's remorse. If you do, you forfeit a small percentage of the purchase price. But essentially that exchange is a big step. And again, just literally what it sounds like, swapping 2 documents over so that you walk away with the seller's contract if you're the buyer, and if you're the seller, you walk away with the buyer's contract so that you each have proof that the other side's agreed on the transaction. That other one, settlement, that we hear tossed around a lot. Once you've exchanged contracts, we'll start preparing for settlement, and that's basically the day that the purchaser hands over all the money that they're paying for the property, and in exchange, the seller transfers legal ownership of the property to them. Again, that's a simplification. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's what all of the weeks of work is for. It's towards that settlement date. Of course, if you're the buyer, once you've paid that purchase price and the seller's given you legal ownership, it's also the all-important day that you get your keys, which is what it's all about at the end of the day.
Indeed. All right, so what sort of work goes in between, for you, what sort of work goes on in between exchange and settlement?
Sure. So, as I mentioned before, it's your rate searches to make sure there's no council rates arrears. There's searches on the water meter as well. So we'll send out someone from council to do a special water meter reading so that we can adjust the water usage. Obviously, if you're settling on the 1st of December, but the last water bill was back on the 1st of November, the seller's had a month using water and they haven't been billed for it yet. You don't want to move in and in a month's time get the bill and you've got to pay for their last month's water usage. So we look at how the sellers used water in the past and we use those calculations to estimate what their usage would have been for that month, and we'll adjust that so that it's completely square and completely fair. We'll also do a lot of chasing of the banks. So if the seller has a bank sitting on their title and a mortgage to discharge, our job is to chase that bank and make sure they're ready for the day of settlement, because they need to have that mortgage ready to discharge and they need to bring along the title for the property to hand over. On the other hand, if you're the purchaser, you've probably got a bank. Most people have a bank coming in, lending them money in exchange for taking a mortgage over the property. That bank needs chasing too. So from all sides, there's chasing of banks going on behind the scenes as well, and all sorts of things like that. In New South Wales recently, we've done a big move over to e-conveyancing, which means that gone are the days of running around town with bank checks on the settlement day to pay the purchase price. Instead, you can do it by electronic funds transfers and sort it out quickly like that. There's a lot of benefits there. It's quicker, it's safer, and for a lot of clients, it's the cheaper option too. But basically, we're on that online workspace doing a lot of work to prepare it for the electronic settlement as well. So there's a lot of work in that.
So there's another word that people are going to hear when that's coming up.
So if you hear the word e-conveyancing, that's what that's all about. It's just a fancy way of saying that you'll be paying the money or getting the money through electronic means, as opposed to running around with the bank checks, which we all know if there's a figure on the bank check or a name misspelt, the settlement can all fall apart. Very high emotion when someone's got a removalist van parked out the front of the property ready to go.
Indeed it is.
Electronic conveyancing, you can jump into the workspace, simply change the figure or the spelling, and off we go. So you can fix the problem instantaneously and it will settle that after then, which is what a lot of people want.
Yeah, indeed. No dramas. Well, I think that covers us off on conveyancing in general, and lets us know exactly what people's responsibilities are and what goes on with conveyancing, and why it's important to have conveyancing done properly and thoroughly.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Aaron, for your time.
Thanks, Greg.
We want to catch up with you and go a little bit more in depth on agency agreements and the contract of sale, because they're both very important documents. But I think they're probably important in themselves, and we need to address each one on their own. So we might do that in
100%
in some further videos.
Excellent. Thanks again, mate.
Good on you. Thanks very much. Thanks for everybody. And as I mentioned, always seek your own professional advice. Have a great time.